Hello there. While we have made a plethora of highly specialized drinks and syrups on this channel, I thought today we would go back to basics because it occurred to me that we have never truly done just a simple classic coffee syrup recipe. So today we're going to be making vanilla syrup, chocolate sauce, and caramel sauce. All of these are, first and foremost, super delicious. They store easily and you can use them in so many things. So without further ado, let's begin. Actually, I lied. I have 2 notes before we begin. That's not true either. I have 3 notes. First things first, if you missed it, I uploaded a kind of special midweek non-coffee video on this channel on Tuesday, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for the support on that video. It was very much kind of out of my comfort zone, but it's something that was a lot of work and I really love to make, and the response to it has been really special. I'll be honest, I have been brought to tears a couple of times reading the comments over the past couple of days, so if you missed it, maybe go check it out because I'd love to do more like that in the future. Second note, on a far more practical tone, all of our recipes today are going to be making between 8 to 10 ounces of syrup in total. I think this is a nice amount that will yield you with roughly 10 drinks, plus or minus if you like your drinks a little bit sweeter, and also it's a nice amount to save and use over the course of a couple of weeks. And our third and final note, we are going to be making quite a bit of use out of our kitchen scales. For syrups, I prefer to use grams and milliliters, so that's what we're gonna be relying on. I may interject teaspoon amounts when it's intuitive for smaller ingredients. But yeah, I think that's everything. Now let's begin. It's always so exciting when the first tray gets pulled out. We're starting with vanilla. Let's review our ingredients. We will need 200 grams of granulated sugar. We'll need 120 milliliters or grams of water just off of a boil. We will be using 2 vanilla beans here. We're gonna be using both the seeds inside these beans and then also the pods themselves during storage of the syrup. We will also be using about 2 milliliters or about a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract. This is an ingredient that I recommend using, and I'll explain more about that later on. However, it is technically optional since we are going to be getting a majority of our vanilla flavor from the beans themselves. First things first, we need to scrape our vanilla beans from the pods. I have my vanilla bean pod, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna carefully take the edge, insert it at the top here, and then drag it down the length of the pod. After that, I'm gonna kind of peel the pod open, exposing all of those beans inside. Once the pod is open, you can take the side of your knife and you're gonna scrape it down the inside, removing a majority of the beans. I always feel like this is the equivalent of trying to run a pair of scissors up a sheet of wrapping paper. Here, this is appropriate use for the beauty blender hand thing, actually. You'll be left with a good amount of vanilla beans. Simply collect them in a nice pile on one side of your cutting board, set your pod to the side, and then repeat that method with your second pod. Now, what's really great about this vanilla syrup recipe is you don't need a stovetop or anything like that. You just need a way to heat your water and then a carafe or pitcher large enough to hold your syrup. So 200 grams of granulated sugar. Now, I told you we'd be using a scale. Gonna pop that right on there. Then we're gonna add our 125 mils of hot water. Now this is a 2-to-1 ratio of sugar to water, meaning this is a rich syrup base. This also means that this is gonna have a much longer shelf life than if we were doing a 1-to-1 simple syrup base. Just keep this moving and stir it for about 3 to 4 minutes until it looks like almost all of that sugar is dissolved. While this finishes, let's talk about that optional vanilla extract. We are gonna be storing this syrup with the vanilla seeds and the pods, meaning that it's gonna continue to infuse in flavor and that vanilla is gonna become more intense over time. However, I've kind of found that if you're planning on using this vanilla syrup immediately after making, you might find it a little bit lacking in vanilla flavor, which is where just a little bump of vanilla extract comes in very helpful. Especially if you are using this syrup in coffee, which of course is already a very intense flavor. I find having this little extra boost initially really makes this a rounder, richer, even better syrup off the bat. Within a day or 2 of those pods infusing into the syrup, you will reach that rich, flavorful intensity for sure. However, this is a nice little, quick hack. We are also going to scrape in our vanilla seeds. Stir everything, make sure it's fully combined. Sometimes you'll see those fresh vanilla seeds kind of clump up together, so use your spoon, break them apart. Just make sure the vanilla is evenly distributed. Now, regretfully, all of my syrup bottles are in use right now, so unfortunately today we're gonna be storing all of our syrups in deli containers. However, this syrup is best sealed in something that can be airtight, giving it its longest lifespan possible. Store this in the fridge. It will last you for at least up to a month, and after a month, I like to just kind of keep an eye on it. If there's anything that looks like weird growth, where are my lids, by the way? Anyways, if there's anything that looks like any strange growth or things start to look funky, you can toss it, but this is a pretty long-lasting syrup. Hey everyone, Editing Morgan here. I was a big ding-dong while filming this video and forgot one of the most important parts of this recipe, which is to put the spent vanilla pods into the syrup container to continue infusing during storage. Sincerest apologies, but now you know. And there we go. Simple vanilla syrup. It's delicious. Put it in everything. I'm gonna go clean up and let's make our chocolate sauce. I want to give a huge thank you to Wild Grain for sponsoring today's video. Alright, buckle up everyone, because it's time for the one thing that could potentially outrank coffee on my favorite things list. Delicious bread, pastries, and pasta. Wild Grain is the first ever Bake from Frozen subscription box for everything from croissants to fettuccine. Wild Grain partners with small bakers and pasta makers across the country to deliver incredible baked goods right to your doorstep. Plus, you can customize your box even with plant-based or gluten-free options. You can build your own box each time without the risk of getting bored, as Wild Grain is constantly adding new seasonal items. For example, in my most recent box, I received their fall apple cider donuts and pumpkin cinnamon biscuits. And let me be truly honest, it is frankly embarrassing how quickly the donuts disappeared in our household of two. So, if you're ready to join, Wild Grain is offering all of you a very special offer with $30 off your first box plus free croissants for life when you visit wildgrain.com/MDC and use code MDC. That's right, $30 off your first box and free croissants for life when you visit the top link in the description. Thank you again to Wild Grain for sponsoring today's video. Everyone on the internet knows that I love mochas. That is no secret at this point, and this is one of my absolute favorite sauces. This is a sauce that ends up tasting really fudgy and chocolate forward in a way that makes it perfect for pairing with coffee, putting in hot chocolates, drizzling on ice cream, eating off of a spoon. You can really do anything with this. For this recipe, we will need 200 grams of granulated sugar, 150 milliliters or grams of water, this does not need to be preheated, 100 grams of high-quality cocoa powder, 7 grams of vanilla bean paste, and 4 grams of sea salt. We're gonna start with adding our sugar, our water, and then our cocoa powder. We're gonna put this on medium heat, and then we're gonna stir it until it becomes smooth. This should happen within 2 to 3 minutes as it begins to warm up. Yes, I'm using the attachment to an electric whisk. No, I don't want to talk about it. And no, I don't know where my handheld whisk is right now. Once the sauce is smooth, we're going to continue heating it until it is just under a simmer. Once you start to see a little bit of movement in the liquid, we want to remove it from heat. We don't want to accidentally scorch any chocolate to the bottom of our pan. Okay, our chocolate sauce is nice and smooth. Let's add our sea salt and our vanilla paste. Now, I've always been kind of curious about the psychology of this, but I have always viewed chocolate and vanilla as opposite flavors. So even now, even though they are so complementary together, it sometimes feels weird to add vanilla to chocolate. Now, the key to this super fudgy sauce really is in the salt that we're adding. Salt is a fantastic flavor enhancer, but it also is a wonderful tool to kind of cut and temper bitterness. Cocoa is really bitter, and even though we're adding a lot of sugar, it can kind of feel a little bit disjointed unless you have that salt to bind the two together. Additionally, I use this most commonly in coffee, which is another bitter ingredient. Again, bitter isn't a bad thing, but it's just a flavor component. And so by having salt in our chocolate sauce, it's going to balance and round out the coffee flavor even more inside our mocha. Salt is just kind of the best, y'all. I don't know what to tell you. I don't make the rules here. And there we have it. Beautiful, silky smooth mocha sauce. Now I'll warn you that this sauce may seem a little bit loose up front. However, as it cools, especially when you put it in the fridge, it will thicken up a good amount. Like our other syrup, keep this in the fridge. It should last for 3 to 4 weeks before I really suggest keeping an eye on it and watching for anything funky. Keep it in a sealed container. It'll be delicious. And of course, label everything you make before storing. How truly exciting to already be on our last tray. For our caramel sauce, we will need 200 grams of granulated sugar, 200 milliliters of heavy whipping cream, 70 milliliters of water, this does not have to be preheated, 30 grams of unsalted butter, this is a little bit more than 2 tablespoons if you are chopping it off the log, 2 milliliters vanilla extract, again about 1/4 teaspoon, and about 3 grams of sea salt. To begin, we're going to put our burner on medium-high heat and then add our sugar and also our water. Now I'm stirring these together once at the beginning just to make sure there's no dry hiding sugar. However, we are then going to leave it untouched to heat for about 5 to 6 minutes or until it reaches a deep amber color. All right, once we reach this kind of golden amber color, we're gonna remove it from the heat and we're gonna stir in our heavy cream, but we're gonna be whisking consistently while doing this. You wanna do this slowly in small amounts, making sure it fully incorporates each time. Okay, once we have reached this stage, I'm gonna return it to the heat and add our butter. Once our butter is entirely melted, we can remove our saucepan from the heat for good. And then the very last thing, once it has cooled slightly, is to add our vanilla extract. And finally, our salt. Now, as we talked about earlier with the chocolate sauce, this caramel is going to feel a little bit loose off the bat, but that's good. It's gonna solidify more in the fridge as it cools, and we wanna make sure it's still somewhat pourable, especially because we're using this in liquid drinks. Most drinks are liquid, to be clear. If your fridge is set to be pretty cool and you encounter your caramel sauce getting a little bit too thick to pour with, you can super easily loosen this back up by popping it in a hot water bath for a couple minutes before you're ready to use it. Or you can always scoop it with a spoon if you prefer. And of course, label everything and store it in the fridge. And with that, we have now made all 3 of my classic, just all-around delicious, useful coffee or just beverage syrups. If you are someone like me who occasionally likes a little sweet treat with your coffee, these are the syrups for you. So with that, I'm gonna go pop these in the fridge and then I'm gonna go make some stuff with them. As usual, my name is Morgan. You can find me here on YouTube plus Instagram or TikTok almost every single day. This has been so much fun. I am off to go reap the rewards of my labor, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye, everyone.